Chapter 19 is on population ecology. Population, if you recall, is a group of one species that lives in the same place at a particular point in time. There's three characteristics for a population that we're going to be looking at: the size, the density, and the dispersion. So by population size, we're referring to the number of individuals that are in a particular area. Now this can be pretty difficult to measure, especially when you consider animals or other mobile organisms. We're able to move from place to place, and therefore it's hard to track an exact count of how many people are around. And so often estimates are going to be taken. When a census is taken, that's when they try to get an actual count of every single person, but most often it's just going to be an estimate. Population density refers to how crowded a population is, so how many individuals are in a particular area. For instance, the population density of our class would be 30 students in one classroom, or 25 students in one classroom, depending on which class you're in. The last one, population dispersion, deals with how those organisms are arranged throughout the area. And they can be in a clumped, even, or random pattern. For clumped, that means that the organisms are going to look similar to this diagram up here, where they will live kind of in little groups. Mainly that's due to food or living space. So they're going to be clumped around the areas where they can get those resources easily. Sometimes it's just a social behavior too, living in a herd or birds living in flocks. And they like to live together. It can help for protection from predators as well. The second pattern is an even dispersion, and that would look something more like the second picture here. And that generally has to do with social interactions and organisms trying to get as far away from each other as possible. So a lot of times these are organisms that are going to try to defend their territory from others. And the last one is random dispersion, and that looks more like this last diagram here. And that's where an organism's location is independent to any others, and that's mainly a lot of plant-type species due to their seeds just being dispersed, by the wind or by birds or insects. And where they land and end up being fertilized is where they land. They don't really have a choice in that matter. Population dynamics refers to things that can change in a population over time. So we're looking at things like birth rates, which in the U.S. would be about 4 million a year. Death or mortality rates, again in the U.S. about 2.4 million a year. Life expectancy rates, which is an average age that you're expected to live. In the U.S., men are a little lower than women at 72 and women are at 79. Age structure, which would refer to how many older people in comparison to younger people or middle-aged people you would have. And then the last piece here is patterns of mortality, which we'll be looking at survivorship curves, which tells you the likelihood of survival at different ages throughout a lifetime. So with age structure, that's just the distribution of individuals among different ages in a population. And these are some age structure diagrams. You can go online and find these for any country. And on these graphs, they'll have males on one side and females on the other side. And then they're also broken down by age brackets. So you can see like 0 to 4, 5 to 9, and so on all the way to 80 plus. And these show the percent population. So you can see, like for Kenya here in this diagram, it's showing that about 8% of the population of Kenya is going to have the age from 0 to 4 and going to be female. And it looks to be about equal on the male side, about 8% from 0 to 4. And they have a much larger population here in the younger ages than in the older ages. So this would be a growing population. In the United States, we also have a younger population than older, but not nearly as extreme. So we would be a slow growing country. And then with this one, with Italy, this actually, you can see a lot more middle-aged people and even a few more older people than younger. So this would be having no growth to your population, maybe even a slight decrease in the population. Patterns of mortality can be shown in survivorship curves. There's 3 different types. A type 1 curve means that you have a higher probability of death at an old age. So this one here is a type 1 curve. So we would be an example of a following a type 1 curve. The older we get, the more likely we are to die. Type 2 is this diagonal here in the middle. This is where you have an equal probability of death at any age. So a lot of different types of bird species follow that pattern. And the last one is type 3, which is where you have a higher chance of dying at a young age than an older age. A lot of insect species, fish, a lot of organisms that lay eggs, and sometimes the eggs will be eaten or not survive, so they have higher chances of dying at young ages than if they do survive that young period of time, then they generally can live out a pretty long life.